They blindfolded me and drove me to an empty field on my 25th birthday, then left me there with nothing but $20 and the words, "Don't ever come back," echoing in the Texas heat. The pickup truck bumped along the gravel road, every jolt sending pain through my ribs where the seatbelt cut into me. I could smell my mother Diana's expensive perfume mixing with the stale cigarette smoke that always clung to my father Charles's clothes. My sister Chloe giggled from the front seat, that high-pitched laugh she'd perfected to charm everyone but me. The blindfold was too tight, pressing against my eyes until I saw stars. But I didn't complain. I never complained anymore. It only made things worse. "Almost there, birthday girl," my father said, his voice carrying that false cheer he used when he was about to do something cruel. "Got a real special surprise for you this year." My stomach clenched. Their surprises were never good. Last year they'd given me a job application to McDonald's wrapped in birthday paper. The year before, a book on how to stop being a burden on successful families. But this felt different. The drive was too long, the anticipation in their voices too sharp. The truck lurched to a stop. I heard doors opening, boots on gravel. Then my door yanked open so hard I nearly fell out. Charles's rough hands grabbed my arm, pulling me from the seat. The Texas sun hit me like a furnace blast. Even through the blindfold I could feel its intensity. "Take it off," Diana said, her voice sweet as poison. "Let her see her gift." The blindfold came away, and the sunlight stabbed into my eyes like needles. When my vision cleared, my heart stopped. We were in the middle of nowhere. Just dead yellow grass stretching to the horizon, a few scraggly mesquite trees offering no shade, and the shimmer of heat waves rising from the baked earth. No buildings. No roads except the dirt track they'd driven in on. "Nothing. Surprise," Chloe said, clapping her hands in mock delight. "The best gift ever is never having to see your pathetic face again." I turned to look at them, my family, standing there in their good clothes like this was some kind of celebration. Charles pulled out his wallet and threw some crumpled bills at my feet. They scattered in the hot wind. "That's your bus fare," he said. "One-way ticket to anywhere that isn't here. Don't come back to the house. Don't call. Don't write. You don't belong with us. Never did." Diana stepped forward, her designer heels incongruous on the dusty ground. 25 years we've put up with you, Aurelia. 25 years of disappointment. Well, happy birthday. You're free now and so are we. Learn to take care of yourself," Chloe added, already heading back to the truck. "Though we all know you'll probably just end up under some bridge somewhere." They climbed back into the truck, Charles starting the engine before Diana even had her door closed. I stood there, the money at my feet, watching them drive away. The dust cloud followed them, then settled, leaving me alone under the merciless Sunday. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there as something cold and hard crystallized in my chest where my heart used to be. The truck disappeared over a rise, taking with it any illusion I'd ever had about family meaning something. I bent down and picked up the money. $32. They'd thrown $32 at me like I was a beggar and thought that made them generous. I started walking. The nearest anything had to be miles away, but I walked. My shoes weren't made for this, thin flats that let every rock through, but I walked. The sun beat down like a hammer, sweat soaking through my clothes within minutes, but I walked. With every step, the cold thing in my chest grew harder, sharper. By the time I reached the first sign of civilization, a rundown diner called Margie's Place, I wasn't the same person they dumped in that field. Margie herself was behind the counter, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and coffee-stained apron. She took one look at me and poured a glass of water without being asked. "Car trouble, honey?" she asked. "Something like that," I said, downing the water in 3 gulps. She refilled it immediately. "Where are you headed?" "Away from here." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Sometimes that's the best direction. You need a ride into town? My son Tommy's heading that way after his shift." I spent 6 hours in that diner, nursing a coffee I bought with part of my $32, using their Wi-Fi on my phone that miraculously still had battery. I didn't look at social media. I knew what I'd find there. Chloe posting about her perfect life, Diana at her charity functions, Charles with his business associates. None of them would mention me. I'd already been erased. Instead, I researched bus schedules, cheap motels, temporary employment agencies, and something else. Something that made Margie glance at me occasionally with concern. I was researching my family. Not their public faces, but the things they thought were hidden. Charles's construction company, Diana's charity, Chloe's social circle. Every detail I could find, I absorbed. Tommy gave me a ride into Amarillo as promised. A quiet young man who didn't ask questions about the girl with dusty clothes and determined eyes. He dropped me at the bus station with a "good luck, ma'am" that sounded like he meant it. I used $20 for a ticket to Dallas. Not because I had any particular destination in mind, but because it was big enough to disappear in and close enough that I could come back when I was ready. And I would come back. That was never in question. The bus ride gave me time to think, to remember every slight, every cruelty, every moment they'd made me feel like nothing. The Christmas when I was 12 and they'd given Chloe a new car while I got a card saying my gift was not being thrown out for another year. The time I'd been in the hospital with appendicitis, and they'd complained about the cost, debating whether it was really necessary while I writhed in pain. The college fund they'd promised that turned out to never have existed, while Chloe went to SMU on their dime. But more than the memories, I thought about what I'd found in my research. Charles's construction company had some interesting contracts. Projects that existed on paper but seemed to lack actual construction sites. Diana's charity, which raised impressive amounts but whose charitable giving was surprisingly modest. And Chloe, perfect Chloe, who'd been in a hit-and-run 6 months ago that had somehow never made the news. By the time the bus pulled into Dallas, I had the beginning of a plan. I found a hostel in Deep Ellum, paying for a week up front with most of my remaining money. Then I went to the library. Public libraries are wonderful things. Free internet, free access to databases, free time to research without anyone wondering what you're doing. I spent 3 days there, 12 hours each day, learning everything I could about forensic accounting, about Texas construction law, about nonprofit regulations. On the 4th day, I got a job. Nothing glamorous, just data entry at a temp agency, but it paid enough to keep me in the hostel and fed. More importantly, it gave me access to systems and databases I could use after hours. The supervisor, an overworked woman named Janet, was just happy to have someone who showed up on time and didn't complain about the boring work. I worked days and researched nights. I reached out carefully, anonymously, to people who'd been hurt by my family. The contractor who'd been stiffed by Charles and driven out of business. The former employee of Diana's charity who'd been fired for asking too many questions. The family of the person Chloe had hit with her car, who'd been paid to keep quiet but never felt right about it. Each person I contacted thought they were alone in their grievance. I began connecting them, creating a network of people with evidence, with stories, with proof of what the Vance family really was beneath their respectable facade. It took 3 months. 3 months of 70-hour weeks, of living on ramen and determination, of remembering that field every time I wanted to give up. But finally, I had everything I needed. The Vances were having their annual charity gala. Diana's big event where she pretended to care about underprivileged children while wearing jewelry that could fund a scholarship program. The mayor would be there. The chief of police, the local news, everyone who mattered in their small Texas town's social hierarchy. I took a Greyhound back to town, arriving the morning of the gala. I'd lost weight, my face sharp where it used to be soft, my eyes harder than they'd ever been. I bought a simple black dress from Goodwill and cleaned up in a gas station bathroom. Then I went to the Marriott where the gala was being held. Getting in was easier than they might think. The catering staff entrance was barely watched, and I looked enough like I belonged that no one questioned me. I waited through the cocktail hour, through the dinner, listening from the service corridor as Charles gave his speech about family values and community responsibility. Then, as they were about to start the charity auction, I walked into the ballroom. The room was beautiful. All crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, people in their finest clothes pretending to care about causes they'd forget by morning. Charles stood at the podium, Diana beside him, Chloe at the head table with her latest boyfriend. They didn't notice me at first. Why would they? I was nobody to them. I walked to the audio-visual table where a bored technician was managing the slideshow of happy charity recipients. I handed him a USB drive and $100, the last of my savings. "Play this," I said. "Trust me. It'll be worth it." Maybe it was the look in my eyes, or maybe he was just bored enough to want chaos, but he took both and plugged in the drive. The screens around the room changed. Instead of smiling children, they showed documents. Construction contracts for buildings that didn't exist, invoices for materials never delivered. Charles's face went from red to white in seconds. "What is this?" he boomed, starting toward the AV table. But the slides kept changing. Now they showed Diana's charity records. Donations in, pennies out, the rest going to administrative costs that seemed to match exactly with her jewelry purchases and spa treatments. Diana grabbed Charles's arm, her face a mask of horror. "Turn it off! Turn it off now!" But it was too late. The room was buzzing, people pulling out phones, taking pictures. Then came the police report from Chloe's hit and run, complete with the original witness statements before they'd been convinced to change them, and the bank records showing the payments to keep them quiet. That's when I stepped into the light where they could see me. "Hello, family," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "I wanted to thank you for my birthday gift. You know, the one where you dumped me in a field with $32 and told me never to come back?" Charles started toward me, his face purple with rage, but two men stepped out of the crowd to block his path. The contractor he'd ruined, the former charity employee. They weren't alone. Others emerged, people I'd found, people I'd connected, all wanting to see the Vances finally face consequences. "You vicious little..." Diana started, but her voice died as she realized cameras were now pointed at her. Local news had been covering the gala. This was going to be the story of the year. "I'm not done," I said, pulling out a manila folder. "This contains copies of everything you've just seen and more. It's already been delivered to the FBI, the IRS, the State Attorney General, and every news outlet in Texas. But I wanted you to see it first. I wanted you to know it was me." Chloe stood up, her perfect face twisted with rage. "You're destroying us, your own family." "Family?" I laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. "You threw me away like garbage on my birthday. You left me in a field to die. Family doesn't do that." The police chief was already on his phone, probably calling for backup. The mayor was backing toward the exit. The social elite of the town were either fleeing or positioning themselves to watch the dramatic downfall of the Vance family. Charles made one last attempt. "Whatever you think you've won, you've lost more. You're alone. You'll always be alone." "Maybe," I said, "but I'd rather be alone than be with people who made me feel worthless every day of my life. At least alone, I know where I stand." The next few hours were chaos. Police arrived. Federal agents would come later. The party dissolved into scandal and speculation. The Vances were escorted out, Diana in tears, Charles threatening lawsuits, Chloe screaming obscenities. I stood in the wreckage of their perfect evening and felt nothing but calm. Margie from the diner appeared at my elbow. I'd invited her, the woman who'd shown me kindness when I had nothing. "You okay, honey?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, watching the last of the guests flee. "I think I finally am." The aftermath was swift and thorough. Charles was arrested on fraud charges. 20 years of skimming from contracts, of billing for work never done, it all came crashing down. Diana's charity was shut down, investigated for embezzlement. She faced her own criminal charges. Chloe, perfect Chloe, was arrested for vehicular assault and attempting to cover it up. Their house was seized, their assets frozen. Within a month, they were facing bankruptcy and prison time. The town that had once bowed to them now crossed the street to avoid being associated with them. I didn't stay to watch it all unfold. I went back to Dallas, back to my data entry job, back to my hostel. But something had changed. The anger that had driven me was gone, replaced by something lighter. Freedom, maybe. Or just the absence of the weight I'd carried for 25 years. Janet at the temp agency noticed the difference. "You seem happier," she said one day. "I figured some things out," I told her. She promoted me to a permanent position, then to supervisor when she realized I actually knew what I was doing. Within 6 months, I had my own apartment, nothing fancy but mine. Within a year, I was running the department. I got a letter from Charles from federal prison. I didn't open it, just marked it return to sender. Diana tried to call from county jail. I blocked the number. Chloe sent messages through mutual acquaintances, alternating between threats and pleas. I ignored them all. But I did go back once, exactly 1 year after they'd left me in that field. I drove my own car this time, a modest Honda I'd bought with my own money. I parked where they'd parked, stood where I'd stood, looked out at the same endless grass under the same brutal Sunday. It looked different now. Not like a place of abandonment, but like a place of beginning. They'd meant to destroy me here, but instead, they'd freed me. Every decision after this moment had been mine. Every success, every failure, every choice had been mine alone. I thought about them in their cells, their lives destroyed by their own cruelty and corruption. I'd pulled the thread, but the tapestry that unraveled had been woven by their own hands. I was just the consequence they never saw coming. A roadrunner darted across the field, disturbing the quiet. I watched it disappear into the brush and smiled. Roadrunners were survivors, thriving in harsh conditions where other birds couldn't. Maybe that's what I was too. Not a victim, not even a victor, just a survivor who'd learned to thrive in the wasteland they'd created. I got back in my car and drove away. This time, I wasn't running from anything. I was driving toward my life, my future, my own story. They'd given me the worst birthday gift imaginable, but in their cruelty, they'd accidentally given me the best one too. Freedom. Complete and absolute freedom from needing their love, their approval, their acknowledgement that I was worth something. Because I was worth something. I always had been. It just took being thrown away to finally see it. That night, back in my Dallas apartment, I made myself a birthday cake. Nothing fancy, just chocolate with chocolate frosting from a box mix. I put 26 candles on it, one for each year including this new one, and sat alone at my small kitchen table. Before I blew them out, I didn't make a wish. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to. Everything I needed, I'd already given myself. The candles flickered in the dark apartment, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I blew them out in one breath and sat in the darkness for a moment, feeling more complete than I ever had surrounded by family. The next morning was a Tuesday. I went to work, had lunch with Janet, helped train a new employee who reminded me a little of myself a year ago, lost and desperate but trying not to show it. I took extra time with her, showed her the shortcuts, the ways to make the boring work bearable. "Thank you," she said at the end of the day. "Everyone else acts like I'm invisible." "You're not," I told her. "Sometimes it just takes a while for people to see you, and sometimes the most important thing is learning to see yourself." She nodded like she understood, though I knew she probably didn't. Not yet, but maybe someday, if she was lucky or unlucky enough, she'd have her own field, her own moment of being thrown away, and she'd discover what I had. That sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the beginning of the best thing. The Vances were convicted on all charges. Charles got 15 years, Diana got 10, Chloe got 5 plus probation. I read about it in the paper over coffee, feeling nothing but mild satisfaction. They were facing the consequences of their own actions, nothing more, nothing less. Someone had leaked the video from the gala to YouTube. It went viral, a perfect storm of scandal and comeuppance. "Family abandons daughter in field, she destroys them with their own crimes" was the title. The comments were brutal. I didn't read them. I didn't need the validation of strangers any more than I'd needed the love of people who were incapable of giving it. Life continued. I dated a little, nothing serious, still learning how to trust people after 25 years of betrayal. I made friends at work, joined a book club, started taking art classes at the community college. Small things, normal things, things that had nothing to do with revenge or anger or pain. One day, about 2 years after the field, I got a call from a lawyer. Not about the criminal cases, those were long settled. This was about inheritance. Apparently, my grandmother, who died when I was young, had left a trust for me that was supposed to mature when I turned 25. The Vances had hidden it, forged documents to access it themselves, but with their convictions, the fraud had been discovered. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to go back to school. Enough to start over properly. Enough to know that someone, at some point, had thought I was worth investing in. I used the money to get my degree in social work. It felt right, helping other people who'd been thrown away, abandoned, told they were worthless. I specialized in family trauma, in the specific kind of wound that comes from being rejected by the people who were supposed to love you most. My office now has a small cactus on the desk. It thrives on neglect, needs barely any water, and blooms beautiful pink flowers once a year. Clients often comment on it, how something so harsh-looking can produce something so lovely. It's all about survival. I tell them, and sometimes the things that try to kill us just make us stronger. They usually nod, thinking it's just a metaphor. But I know better. I know about fields and abandonment and the way rock bottom can become a foundation. I know about the gift of being thrown away by people who were never capable of seeing your worth. The Vances are still in prison. They'll be out eventually, but they'll never recover what they lost. The town they once ruled now uses their name as a cautionary tale. The charity Diana ran was reformed under new management and actually helps children now. Charles's construction company was bought out and restructured, the new owners making a point of completing all the projects he'd left unfinished. And me? I'm 30 now. I have a life that's entirely mine, built on my own terms, with my own hands. It's not perfect. I still have trust issues. I still sometimes wake up from nightmares about that field. But I also have peace, purpose, and the knowledge that I survived something that should have destroyed me and came out stronger. Sometimes I drive past that field on my way to visit clients in rural areas. It looks different every time. Sometimes green after rain, sometimes brown in drought, always changing, but always there. I don't stop anymore. There's nothing there for me now. It's just a place where one story ended and another began. The last time I saw it, there were wildflowers blooming, purple and yellow and white, growing from the seemingly dead earth. They'd bloom, die, and come back next season, over and over, nobody tending them, nobody caring for them, but persisting anyway. That's what survival looks like. Not pretty, not easy, but persistent. Growing in hostile ground, blooming when no one expects it, coming back season after season, stronger for having survived the harsh conditions. They gave me $32 and told me to disappear. Instead, I became someone they never could have imagined. Not because I destroyed them, though I did, but because I built myself into someone who didn't need them, who didn't need anyone's permission to exist, to matter, to thrive. That was their gift to me, the birthday present they never meant to give. They taught me I was strong enough to survive being thrown away, and in teaching me that, they sealed their own fate. Because someone who survived being discarded has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The field is still there. It will outlast all of us. And somewhere in Texas, there's a family in prison, paying the price for thinking they could throw a person away like trash and face no consequences. They learn too late that sometimes the trash you throw out grows thorns and comes back to show you exactly what you threw away. But I don't think about them much anymore. I have work to do, people to help, a life to live. The best revenge I've learned isn't just success. It's indifference. It's building something so good that the people who hurt you become footnotes in your story rather than main characters. My story now is about survival, growth, and helping others find their way out of their own fields. It's about becoming the person I was always meant to be, once the weight of their hatred was lifted off my shoulders. And it all started with being blindfolded, driven to nowhere, and left with nothing but rage and determination. They meant it as an ending. I made it a beginning. And that transformation, that alchemy of abandonment into strength, that's the real gift I gave myself.